Hey everybody, I am April Patterson, and I'm here with my guest, Kelly Newcom, and I am very excited to have you guys listening to this podcast. I'm going to tell you a secret about me. I never ever wanted to do a podcast. I'm like, oh my gosh, no way, I would never do a podcast. But for what I'm really passionate about, everybody keeps saying podcasts are the way to go. You need a podcast. I'm like, fine, I'll do a podcast. So anyways, who am I? So I started Rodeo Fame magazine. I grew up in the cowboy world, so I do know how to ride and rope, and that's all I ever knew is the cowboy world. And I actually wanted to go to Africa when I was young, and I actually tried like 2 or 3 times, and it never happened. And my mom was like, okay, if you really want to make a difference in the world, because that's all when I was little, literally used to get burdened thinking about all the kids that were going hungry, and I would cry. I was telling this girl the other day, I would literally cry, oh my God, all these problems, what am I going to do? Anyways, Africa, I don't know why I thought like people in Africa needed help so much, but I wanted to go there. So didn't do that. I ended up starting a magazine in the cowboy world because my mom really encouraged me, just use what you have. And this is what I had, the cowboy world. And my dad, I can't tell you how much I would not be here if it weren't for my dad and his faith. And just like he always, always, for if you're passionate about something, he always said just go for it. Like for him, that was the gold buckle in the cowboy world. And he won the world 4 times, and he's been to the national finals rodeo 30 times. Anyway, so he's like a big deal in the cowboy world. So I started networking in the cowboy world and doing interviews and stuff. And then I thought, okay, how can I use the cowboy world to make a difference? Well, in 2013, me and my husband started taking foster to adopt classes because somewhere I heard about foster to adopt, so we started taking classes, and that introduced me to human trafficking. And bam, I just knew, okay, from here on out, I'm going to use this magazine that everybody said was lame, like, oh, you can't do print. And I was like, just did. I'm like, I'm doing it. And anyways, it's been a great thing. The magazines have went into prisons, and people have written me actually from prison. And so it's been an awesome thing. And I actually did a gala with all the cowboy world, and a lot of people, like in the cowboy world, sometimes there's division. Well, they all came together for a thing called Legacy of the West Gala to help raise awareness for human trafficking. And anyways, so fast forward to now, everything I do, these podcasts, you were my first choice, and I'm so happy that you're here because you guys have to listen to her. You have to go and Google her. There's so much you're gonna like. She has so much to pour into you, and it's so valuable. But I cannot tell you, having you here, like since I've started this magazine until now, everything that you're about is what I'm about and what I have had in my heart and what I'm working towards. And anyways, so the podcast that you guys are going to hear, I love people. So that's the other thing. I just love all kinds of people. We're going to have tattoo people on, like dirt bike riders, like country musicians, and you guys are going to meet a lot of the world champion cowboys that I grew up with. And anyways, so to start us off though, I really want you guys to meet Kelly Newcom, and she is, so let me tell you the first story how I met you is at a church at this Bible study in 2017.
Yeah,
and
probably.
Yeah, when I went to this Bible study, this women's group, I thought, oh, I wonder who this speaker is. Anyways, I could not take notes fast enough. I mean, absolutely. I thought this lady has got to be on like worldwide news. Like this is like amazing stuff. So the Managing Media, Creating Character, the book, that book was amazing. And it literally helped me with my kids. And the stuff that I learned there was awesome. But You're the mother of 7. That's the other thing that, oh my gosh. Anyways, so this is Kelly Newcom. Please just tell us a little bit.
Thank you,
about
April.
why
Thank
you do
you.
what you
It's
do.
a pleasure to be here. So yeah, my name is Kelly. I have 7 adopted children out of the foster care system. That wasn't my initial plan, but that was God's plan. And it really rings true to scripture that God has plans for us that we can't even think and imagine or even dream of. And they're always better than our own plans. Of course, I wanted my own. That didn't happen. We adopted 2. And actually today, 14 years ago, I got my first 2 kids. So today is like their 14-year gotcha day is what we call that.
That's
so
awesome.
14 years ago, I got my first 2 kids. And then we adopted a teenager in 2013. And then that teenager had 4 younger siblings still stuck in foster care in a different city that she had been separated from. And we took them in as well 6 months later. So I went from basically 2 kids to 7 kids in a matter of 6 months. So it was really crazy. And it's still actually pretty crazy. I mean, we've been many years into this, and ultimately, I look at these kids and there's so much trauma that it makes me want to pull my hair out that I didn't cause, but that I'm dealing with the repercussions of. But these are children who are just made in the image of God, who just need love and be steered onto the right path. And that's ultimately how I see my goal in parenting, and just loving them. And just, I know that it's not going to be the same as what maybe if I raised them biologically. But as you know, and this is kind of alludes to, I tell the story in my book, I tell it anytime I speak, that teenager that I adopted, she was 15 when we got her, but turned 16 within months. So she had spent 10 years of her life with drug addicted parents, and then 6 years in foster care, essentially. So she'd had a rough upbringing and was vulnerable. And that's where this trafficking all comes in, is they target the vulnerable. And she was targeted online through social media accounts that we did not allow, but friends at school. So, I mean, this is 2013. This is like the time frame where literally every high school student is just being handed an iPhone because we didn't know any better. Like, let me just give you my hand-me-down. All these kids all of a sudden have this internet and social media access that they had never had in their pocket. And so she used other people's phones and created these relationships that she thought were genuine. These men were telling her she's beautiful and how loved she is and all of this stuff. Well, she ended up running away and was gone for a week when someone from the school actually contacted us and said, hey, we know where she is. And she's actually hiding out in this trailer right here in our little hometown. But I think she's going to be trafficked because she said that this man from Michigan is coming to get her. But here's where she is. And so we were actually able to rescue her out of this place, which, I mean, Sheriff's Department ended up showing up. They were harboring a host of runaway girls in this one trailer. Who knows, what could have happened at that point. So we redeemed that situation. But, trauma is trauma. And this is what traffickers really prey on. We continued to have struggles with her over and over again. And by the time she turned 18, she just left. So that's the ugly part of the story. She lived on the street for a year and a half, has horrible nightmare stories to tell about it. To which a lot of I probably don't even know the whole of. But praise God. He is good. And while she did get pregnant on the streets, she is married and is 24. My granddaughter is 3.5 and, is redeemed. But it could have been much, much worse if there wasn't someone like me fighting for her, fighting to keep her, fighting constantly. I would go down on the streets when she was living on the streets and just try and, speak sense into all of this. So that's really how I would say I started my ministry. When that all happened, I was like, what's going on with parents? And I mean, I'm looking at these phones saying, I know my kids have trauma. So this seems really dangerous. That was my initial thought. So this seems dangerous. But then I thought, all these kids, I mean, my child's not the only one doing all of this type of stuff. And so it really made me passionate about speaking out about smartphones. I mean, that's really ultimately the goal. At the same time, I had a 13-year-old daughter who was being asked for nudes. She was in 7th grade. And I was like, you've got to be kidding.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't okay. This is way too much. And it was all smartphone related. So I just kept lamenting over it so much that everybody around me said, Kelly, you just need to do something. This is God saying to you, do something. Kind of like, you just had this pressing on your heart. You just need to do something. Whatever that is, just something.
Yeah,
And,
something.
and so I just started speaking out. I would just, arrange meetings in coffee shops for parents. Say, hey, you want to talk about smartphones? Let's talk about what it looks like to put boundaries around these and why we should do that. And the Lord led me to write the book, Managing Media, Creating Character, which was all him. I am not a writer. I mean, I have a science major. I'm a pharmacist by day. And, here I am speaking out on smartphones and writing books at night. It was really, and raising 7 kids. It was a crazy time. But since then, I too do a podcast, the Brave Parenting Podcast, where I talk about all these type of issues in a gospel, kind of biblical worldview way of approaching it. Ultimately, because I know that if you don't have that kind of background, you're really just going to kind of go the ways of the world and let your kids have smartphones at 10 because that's what the world's doing. And they don't think, everybody kind of thinks, not my kid, not my kid, not my kid. But what we know is this is where the dangers lie. And it's not just the dangers of getting addicted to social media or addicted to the likes on Instagram and, becoming narcissistic and posting pictures of yourself. There's a lot of real dangers. And I know this is what we're going to talk about. There's real dangers of real predators, real people out there who want more than just to maybe get a nude picture. They want to actually capture and violate and harm these children.
Yeah. It's a serious thing. It's scary, but I have a lot of people that, since I started talking about this in the cowboy world, they're like, oh man, like that is so scary. I can't even think about it. We have to think about it.
Yeah.
And everything that you just said, what I love, there's a lot of things, but one of the things that stands out to me is brave parenting. We have to be brave parents. Like, yeah, it might be hard, having kids that have gone through so much and you hate to see that, the struggles that they go through, but we have to be brave. We have to face that. That's what real love does. Like, love is powerful, and that is what you have done, and that's awesome. Thank you so much. And the other thing that you said is like, you did something, do something. So in our cowboy world, we actually did a thing called Longest Runway, and it's actually in the works. We did our first shooting out on a ranch in Texas, but we actually wanted to do something in the fashion world and our cowboy world to raise awareness. And one of the girls there, the model, said, hey, we have just got to do something. That word just kept coming out, like do something. And one of the things that you said whenever I heard you the first time was whenever you were talking about social media and how all this stuff is very scary, and but you said, hey, it is scary and it is serious and it is dangerous, but we just need to be smart. And you said God has not given us the spirit of fear, but power, the spirit of love, the spirit of a sound mind.
Sound mind, yes.
And we don't have to be confused, like, or really, really scared about this. We just need to start doing something, start talking, like this podcast. My hopes is that people, share this and they start following you and they find out little things that they could do to help, stop human trafficking. One of the things that I wanted to tell everybody about, okay, stop human trafficking. Like, one of the things I get a lot is like, oh my God, that is so huge. It's overwhelming even for me. Like, how are we going to stop human trafficking? Well, I heard that over the data, whatever, statistics, I don't know where they come up with them. But anyways, they've said 70% of traffic victims have come out of the foster system at one point. And then there's over 400,000 kids in the United States in the foster system. Well, what I thought of was that, and I know other people have thought of this too, but this is really what drives me to even do this podcast, is that we've got to do something about that 400,000. We've got to protect them, because there's a think about just churches in general, Christians, professed Christians in the world. There's millions. There's 400,000 kids. That's a small number.
Yeah.
And so anyways, so what do we do? Okay, so I really want to encourage people to like foster to adopt. That's something, and there's a lot of different things that people can do, but I want to shift back to you talking about um the what would you say to people, because you've uh with your kids and everything, I know that it was really hard with fostering to adopt. What would you tell somebody thinking about doing that?
Well, hands down, it definitely requires prayer. There are some people who really maybe have had their own trauma in their life and cannot handle the trauma of a child. That I know is foremost because
Yes.
well, at least maybe you could do it with one, but I have 7, right? So the trauma of 7, it is a lot. It is a lot to bear. So always, say it requires prayer. Second, this is no matter what that child brings to your home and disrupts your comfort, because that's really hands down. Let's just be real and honest and humble with ourselves. The main reason people don't do it is because it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to take another child in because you kind of have to pretend, right? You're pretending that you love this child when you don't even know them, right? There's a lot of that in there, and but if you are thinking of it, if the Lord has put that on your heart, this is a child made in the image of God who has so much potential and who has a purpose. That purpose has been hindered a little bit, but man, so redeemed. We serve a God who redeems. That is what he does, and he uses us. He's not just going to supernaturally say, I'm just going to, wave a wand and fix your trauma. That doesn't happen. He uses us. That's our purpose. And if that's been placed on your heart and you have a heart for these type of kids, then absolutely you do it. And you do it and you walk in faith. And it's never how you think. The federal government offers free college tuition for life for kids who were adopted over the age of 4. Okay, so all of my children get free college tuition. I have launched 4 kids. I have 4 18 and over. And I have not gotten any of them into college. Why? Because trauma is hard. It is hard for them. And I have had some of these 14 years.
Yeah.
And so, but that doesn't mean their life isn't good and it isn't serving a purpose. They may have struggles. It takes a little while longer to do all of that. So no, you're not going to, raise this straight A kid who's going to walk the straight and narrow path and go and, be a brain surgeon. That probably isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
But the difference that you can make in a child's life is so profound and so significant. You're literally talking about the difference of learning a trade and having a successful life and potentially breaking that chain of bondage and generational, harm that their parents have kind of given to them, breaking those chains and actually raising kids the right way themselves, because it's a generational thing too.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Grandparents have, had their kids had, troubles or in foster care, and then those kids have their kids in foster care. It's very much like that. So the difference you can make in just breaking some of that cycle, just the trajectory of their life is still going to be so different. Even though it may not look like your biological kids or the other kids in their peer group, you're talking of saving them from vulnerable trafficking type of situations like my oldest daughter was in. If she didn't have us to constantly fall back on, to call us when she got arrested and put in jail, to call us when she was, pregnant and didn't know what to do, where would she have ended up? That's those questions. They need people for life to say, I need someone. And that's really what it's about. And that it's a big vision. It's a big acceptance. Like, I'm going to take this kid on, for life, essentially. But that's what you do when you have biological children. And these kids they desperately need love.
Yeah.
In its simplest, most basic form.
Yeah. I want to ask you about, so one of the things that I heard you say the first time I heard you talk was a lot about what we can do with social media with our kids at home. you know, and I had never heard anybody else talk about that. So the parents that are listening, I would, you know, I would really like you to, she obviously can't share all there is to share, so we will have that in a link below. But just share some of the things that people can do, you know, to protect their kids.
Ultimately, waiting is loving. Waiting to, number one, give your child a smartphone. We give it to them typically because they ask for it, and it's very convenient for us.
Yeah.
Because it entertains them. My kids of trauma who have tics and all these issues, I know that I can give them a device and they will sit there and they will play and they won't bother me and they won't bother anybody else, but I refuse. I refuse to have them numbed by a device instead of dealing with life, dealing with the issues that are right in front of them, their struggles, all of that. Well, kids of any child is going to be numbed by a device. It's the nature of how the devices work. And that just isn't, overall, that isn't good for them. It isn't good for their brains. It isn't good for their productivity, for their health. There's just a million things I could go on about that. So waiting, you wait, you exert patience, right? That's one of the first character traits I talk about in managing media, creating character. And it starts with you, our own patience. We wait to give them a smartphone. We wait to give them social media.
Yeah.
Most of us just give in, and because our kids want it. So as soon as they ask, or I even had a parent just tell me, well, he was the last one in his peer group, and so I had to give it. No, you actually don't have to, right?
Yeah.
And so we as parents today are caving to so much societal and peer group pressure. That's where the brave comes in. We really have to be brave and kind of say no, because not every child at 12 years old is capable of handling. Some very well could be. Handle social media, they could handle a phone. But every older child that I've ever asked, you know, they're always going to ask for a phone at 12, 10. Yeah. They're always going to ask for social media as soon as they get to middle school. But if you ask a high schooler who's like, say, 16, and you compare a 16-year-old sophomore to a 6th grade middle schooler, and you say to that 16-year-old, do you think that 6th grader should be on social media? You know what their answer is? No way. No way. You are going to be hard-pressed to find a 16-year-old who's experienced social media for several years. Say, yeah, that 6th grader should absolutely, because they know how harsh it is and how self-deprecating it can be, and just the struggles of self-worth and all of that drama that goes into that, how hard that is. Yeah. So, of course, they're going to protect their, 6th grade self, you know?
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
say, no way. And so that's the thing. But we look at that 6th grader and we say, oh, well, you know, this is what all of the friends are having. This is how they communicate.
Yeah.
And we give in. And so waiting truly is the most loving thing that you can do. And maybe it's not you wait till 7th grade or you wait till 8th grade. Any amount of waiting teaches them that initial part of instant gratification is not what we're after in the world. Yeah. Because the device is the only thing in life that gives us that. Yeah. Nothing else is instantly gratifying. You know, very few things. Everything requires us to have patience and to wait. And so when it comes to the devices, when it comes to the media, that is the best place to start teaching delayed gratification.
I like that. Loving is waiting. And I cannot say this enough, that you have to listen to the podcast and also the book, the Managing Media, Creating Character. Creating Character. Like I said, I couldn't take notes fast enough, but it will help you so much. So I know we want to try to keep this somewhat short since this is our first one, but it's a little bit hard. But the last thing that I want to kind of end with is, so I know it's not for everybody to foster to adopt. Well, one of the other things I wanted to bring up is that so with Rodeo Fame and Forever Cowboys, the nonprofit that we've partnered with, we really, really want to focus on the kids that age out. So 20 or 30 kids, because unfortunately that's the truth of it. You know, they age out. So 20 or 30,000 age out every year. And so the statistics are the vast majority of that 30,000 every year, they either commit suicide, they're trafficked, or they end up in the judicial system, or they become homeless. So I know I don't want to be a downer, because there's hope. So what this whole podcast, all we're actually, Rodeo Fame's producing 5 podcasts. Okay. So on all of them, whether you're into tattoos or, whatever you're into, real estate business, we have a, a podcast for that. And our whole purpose in doing that is just to network with people, like meet cool people, promote them. But what we want them to do for us is our focus right now and for the next 5 years is to build safe houses for the kids that age out. And we actually have a project right now in Texas, like that we're building. And you guys can check that out, like on our link and everything. Because
That's great. I love it.
yeah, we can get involved.
It's so necessary. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
No, it's fine.
I can count on, 2 hands right off the top of my head of kids I know who have aged out, who've families have maybe tried to take them in, but you try and get adopted at like 17 and it's so hard.
Yeah.
And so even if they've been adopted or they aged out, your statistic, I mean, they're absolutely true. I mean, just in the people and in the circles that I work with, and it is so sad and it's so, so tragic.
Yeah.
Of the stories.
Yeah.
And
even if, so with the safe houses, I mean, if you're like, oh, I don't know what to do, absolutely log on, go to rodeofame.com or message us. We have so many areas to plug you in. Like if you just want to come and volunteer and like love on the kids who have aged out, or you want to teach them how to leather, like we have a spot that we're building. Like we've already built one safe house out on this ranch, but I'm so excited to say that we're literally like a week away from one of them being done, the safe house in Texas. And the other day, so like I said, all my life is about literally my husband and my kids. They hear it all the time. The foster system and human trafficking. So the other thing we do a thing called Wake the World. We're surfers and like we love the water and stuff. We're a part of Wake the World, and they take kids out from we take kids out on the boat and teach them how to surf and stuff that are from orphanages. But the other day we met a kid that's about to age out, and it was awesome because we got to tell him about what we were doing with the safe house, and he's probably going to come over. And otherwise, he said in December he's aging out, and I said, what are you going to do? Like, that's so exciting, your birthday. He goes, and he's trying to be optimistic, but he has no idea. He has nowhere to go. He has no family. And I know that there's people watching right now that they're empty nesters. Like, hey, maybe, think about it.
yeah, absolutely.
So anyways, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
And I know I'm going to have you back again because sorry for you. She had to be our first, podcast person, guest. But anyways, I love you and thank you so much.
Thank you for the work that you're doing. I think it's awesome. It's incredible and it's needed. It really is. And everything makes an impact and everybody can do something.
Yeah.
If you can't bring a child into your home, there are so many organizations like what you're doing, whether it be safe houses, people that provide needed cribs and car seats and all that for immediate placements. I mean, there are so many things that you can
so many things. And we will have in the link below, and on rodeofame.com, we have a section where it's just, there's so many things that you can do to get involved. And also when you partner with us, everything that we're about, like Rodeo Fame and Forever Cowboys, I will tell you, I'm in charge of both of them basically. And all I can think about, my whole heart is let's use all of our funds, all of our energy, all of our relationships to spread the word, and let's take care of these kids because they're okay. I'm going to end with this. This thought has gone over and over and over in my mind is that one night I was laying there and I was thinking, if something happened to me and my husband and I had no other family members to take care of my kids when I died, would I trust or the world the way it is today and the systems that are set in place, would I trust them to love on my kids and look out for their future? Because they have so much on the inside of them. Thinking about my son, like my son, he's actually learning the piano. He has so much talent. He's actually doing the music for the intro of all the podcasts. So you can see how he grows and develops. But absolutely not. Is there any system out there that I know of? I know there are. I know there's some. I know there's some doing good. but there's not enough,
Mm-hmm.
you know, there's not enough. And so that is what, I mean, in 5 years, my goal is to just cause a revival with these podcasts and just put a fire under people to say, hey, if you have no purpose and you're sitting there like depressed, get up. I will plug you in. We will plug you in. We have plenty of things
Yeah.
that we can plug you into.
I love it.
So,
Yeah, that's awesome, April.
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.